I actually wanted to be an actor. We did 35 countries and across 4 different continents, playing Tarzan, working with lions, hyenas, cheetahs, leopards. I basically then just pivoted the business to B2B and thought, let's just build these big, boring companies, a piece of technology. I was doing these like insane hours on MUTU.
Supermarkets are black boxes. Like the brand actually leverage with the supermarket to kind of like tell them we should be placing our products here, not here.
Those retailers, they are money printing machines. We've never thought about the world through categories. We think about it through occasions. You're more meaningful, you're more important. You're not going to eat burgers every day. Brands have like doubled their sales in a month.
This is Mark Pawlikowski, and welcome to the TechMates podcast, where my partner Henrik and I explore how Kiwi and Aussie founders are reshaping the future and what sets them apart. Henrik and I have been part of successful companies in Silicon Valley and Europe, and now bring that expertise to partner with entrepreneurs in Australasia. By sharing the personal stories of successful Kiwi and Aussie founders and how they got here, we hope to inspire you to dream big. This is TechMates, bringing an outsider's perspective to the stories of those daring to disrupt down under. Let's dive in.
All right, Toby, thank you so much for joining us on TechMates.
My pleasure. I'm super stoked to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're just talking that we actually live 2 bays away from each other. So I'm in Maroubra Beach, you're in Coogee Beach, which is great.
I know.
And you just moved over from New Zealand. So yeah, I want to dig a little bit deeper into kind of your upbringing in New Zealand. I've seen you're on your 3rd or 4th venture with Appetise. So I want to learn a bit more about your previous ventures. But yeah, maybe we start with your upbringing. So what was it like growing up in New Zealand?
Yeah, I'd say I'm a sucker for punishment being on the 3rd lap. Yeah, growing up in New Zealand was awesome. I'm one of 7 children, so
Really?
one of the younger ones. Yeah, dad was busy, so there's a couple of different wives in there, but we all grew up as siblings and really tight. But yeah, I've got a younger sister, and then there's 5 boys, and then a sister at the top. It's kind of a sister sandwich there. And growing up was awesome, like being part of a big family. Actually grew up in like a really small rural town called Te Aroha. It's like in the kind of Waikato area. And it was cool being at a school with like 200 kids. You just learned to be innovative and find things to do that brought you joy, right? Because you didn't have like malls or events. There was nothing. So you would learn new ways to ride your bike in places you shouldn't ride a bike, and skateboarding and jumping off bridges and just doing like fun, silly stuff as a kid.
Looking back, what was the like craziest thing that you've done that you're like, man, maybe I should have done that?
Oh, there's a river that runs through Te Aroha called like the Waihao River, and it moves quick. And there's all sorts of stuff. You see cars every now and then like floating in there, massive logs. It's super dangerous. And we would jump off this bridge, it's probably like 7 or 8 meters high, and then float down the river for like 3 or 4 Ks to what we called the beach, which is this little like sandy bay in this wetlands. And then run back and just do it on repeat. And every now and then you'd see like stuff in that river that was just no good. Super dangerous and stupid, but as a 15-year-old, it's how you had fun.
That's awesome.
Were you a good student?
Was I a good student? Depends who's asking. I think I'm like super curious. So always wanted to know why things were done a certain way or find out more, kind of, but why kind of person, which probably was a bit annoying. And yeah, I found if I wasn't stimulated, like if I wasn't learning lots or doing things that were challenging, I guess I would then maybe become a bit distracting to others or, a bit chatty to friends. So I think I wasn't a bad student. I just think I was, always wanted to see if there was something more out there for my brain.
Right. And when you were in your teenage years, did you already have an idea of what your career was going to be like? Did you have a sense of what you wanted to do?
I really didn't, to be honest. It's really interesting. On my mum's side, there are lots of like really successful entrepreneurs. There's a woman called Anna Stredden. She's my auntie. She's built this like incredible like fashion empire. She's run probably 6 or 7 different like multi-million-dollar companies. Just an amazing entrepreneur. My uncle ran Jenny and Homes. He was like the lead franchisor of that whole organization. Had like auntie and uncle own a syndicate of pubs. So I had always had like this. It's like innovation and entrepreneurship around me. Didn't really know that's what it was called, but always thought, love to do something like that. Funnily enough, I actually wanted to be an actor of
Really?
all things. One of my 5 brothers is an actor now. And I just idolized him. I was like, I want to do that. I want to be on big movies and TV shows, but I just, wasn't cut out for it.
Did you try?
Just
Did you try acting?
I did. Yeah, I did. I ended up like taking drama at school, which was, being in a small school where you played first 15 rugby and that, and then or now I'm doing drama. It went down, as you could probably only imagine.
Did you get picked on because of that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. All my friends going, you've gone from like, playing flanker for our first 15 to now performing in the school play. Definitely was pretty tough on the on the ego. But I just, yeah, I loved it, and that's kind of what you had to do to be taken seriously in that space. Ended up getting in like a bunch of sort of short films and applying for a bunch of things. But when it came down to going to drama school or going to university, I sort of decided university might be the better option.
What'd you
Right.
study?
So I started with finance, and
That's very
you
different from acting.
couldn't be more different. And I didn't last very long. It was 2 years of finance.
Why did you choose that?
Just
So different.
I didn't really know what I wanted to do at university. I had no idea. Everyone was going to university, and I just kind of thought, if you don't, then you're going to get left behind. And so I picked commerce and thought, finance was the one that wasn't. I guess when you told people you're doing marketing or management, you got kind of eyebrows raised. And
Mm.
so I just picked one of the hard ones. And yeah, I hated it. Just absolutely hated it. So ended up finishing with like a mix of finance and management in the end.
Right.
Mm.
And then you already
Mm.
started a business in university. Is that right? Did I get the dates right?
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
was
I
that
mean, you
about?
shouldn't have favorite businesses. But this one was just so cool. It was basically, I don't know how much you know about Dunedin University. Super random. This really high concentration of students, and for whatever reason, they take joy in lighting couches on fire and just living in these beat up flats. And so think of these huge 6 to 8 people flats, lots of guys living in them, and they just punch holes in the walls, break windows. The flats are just incredibly broken and damaged. It's real bizarre, but that's just normal.
So you
And
don't want
so,
to be a landlord in Dunedin, sounds like.
well, you make a lot of money because all
Oh,
the
dude.
students get them. Every year you have to get them fixed, and so that's where the first idea for this business came from. Is we had an inspection. I got a builder in to help me fix all the holes in the walls and windows and that sort of thing, and it was like eye-wateringly expensive. And I watched this guy fix this little fist-sized hole in the wall, and it was $200, and it took him like 30 minutes. And I was like, I'll never pay for that ever again. And so I basically went to Bunnings and went and bought a whole bunch of like plaster and equipment, got YouTube up, and started fixing the rest of them. Look, it wasn't as good as the builder, let's be honest. It wasn't as good. You could tell there was a discrepancy, but it wasn't also $200 a hole. And word just went like rapid fire. Like, hey, there's this guy called Toby. He can like fix up your flat. And so I was a little bit like, oh, okay, here we go. And so I ended up making it into a company called Scarfy Repairs. Scarfies are what like Dunedin students call themselves.
So how much? So the guy was taking 200. You were taking what, like 100 per hole, or how much did you charge?
Yeah, the pricing, you'll hate this, Mark, as an investor, but the pricing was just like hit and hope. It'd be like, 100 seems pretty good. You have 100, we'll just do 80, whatever. It was just super, super chill. But yeah, I was making probably like $4,000 a day just fixing like holes in
A
the walls,
day?
broken windows. Yeah, I was a very well-off student compared to everyone else.
Wait, you mean like, but how'd you have time to do that? I assume like fixing holes is not a quick and easy thing, right?
No, uni, I think, not a problem I'll ever solve, but I think that like the idea of doing like a 4-year degree where you're doing, 1 or 2 lectures a day, it's a very broken system. So
Mm.
students have a lot of time on their hands. And
Mm.
so, yeah, pretty much like I'd do a couple hours a day of uni things. I was playing a bunch of sport, and the rest of the time just patching up dingy flats. It was great.
Yeah. How much did you make? Like over like the whole time of doing that?
Probably like maybe a couple of $100,000 all
You're
up,
kidding.
which for a
Wow.
student was pretty good. Yeah.
You made like
Yeah,
a quarter of a million fixing holes.
It's just fixing student flats. Yeah. And
Holy shit.
I ended up I was going to try and make it really big. That I was really excited. I then signed a couple of partnerships with the realtors. And so they would have, hundreds of houses, and I was going to be like the guy that fixed their stuff. But I just, yeah, my wife and I wanted to go traveling and for a year. And so I thought, actually, I'm just going to sell this business. I don't want to fix holes in the wall forever. And I actually had a bit of a tricky situation there. I was able to sell it, which was great. We signed a contract. There was a handover day about 4 days before we got on a plane to Europe, and the guy just disappeared. And so I got legal advice, and they basically said, look, you can pursue this and you'll get paid out the like minimum amount for probably the rest of your life. But the minimum amount in New Zealand is very little. It's like $5 a week or something. But I just didn't want that stress before our holiday. So I just was like, whatever. I just sold all the equipment, the vehicles. So yeah, it was a bit of a shame.
This was a serious business. You had vehicles and equipment.
Yeah. I had like 4 staff working as well. It's like a pretty like sophisticated wee outfit for a student venture. It was cool.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah,
That's
it got
really
out of hand. I was fixing some stuff that a guy with no experience shouldn't be fixing.
Cool.
So there was this one flat where the whole roof had like caved in. Big party, people like hitting the roof. So the whole thing caved in. So it's like getting kind of structural, which is, not what a cowboy builder should be fixing. But, I still did it. Yeah. I would fix all sorts, but yeah, where I got quite lucky is I found this awesome network of contractors, like other glazers who do the windows, actual plumbers and sparkies and builders who could do proper renovations. I was a bit cautious of going near anything with like electrical or plumbing because that's just not where you want to get stuck. Yeah, real bizarre, real random first business.
Oh, I want to go to one of those parties in your old university. They sound incredible.
Oh, they are so. I'll tell you about one. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty random. Picture a house with 7 rooms, right? And they all are attached to the lounge. And so every year, each person who lived in that flat was allowed to invite 20 people to their bedroom, and they would get a keg, so like a 250-liter keg of beer, and it was a race. So every room, they were racing to get rid of the whole keg. And then once you were finished, you had to get to the lounge, but you weren't allowed to go through the bedroom door. So people would come to the flat with like sledgehammers and heavy like equipment and smash through the wall and climb into the lounge. And the last flat there was the loser. It's like that sort of stuff. Like how crazy is that for a student town? That was like a common party. It's so random.
That was a common party. Wait, and so the preferred method of egress was smashing through the walls?
Through the walls. Yeah. Yeah. After, 10 liters of beer. Just crazy.
That sounds incredible. So you took your fortunes and went to Europe to travel a little bit?
Yeah. Yes. So Elise and I, we so co-founder in Appetise, wife, met at uni, and
was she just smashing walls with you or fixing?
Yeah, I saw her wielding a sledgehammer. I thought that's the one. That's the one. I did get her out fixing flats all the time. She actually had some broken stuff in her flat, and I said, "You can fix it yourself." I gave her all the tools, so she's pretty good.
Wow. How'd you meet her?
That was kind of a funny story as well. I had this I still have this guy Brad, he's like a really good friend of mine. We were just the 2 best buds, and then he started seeing someone, and I said, "Hey, that's not sitting very well with me. Now I'm not seeing much of you anymore. That this new person's entered the scene." And he said, "Look, I'll try and find you a friend." Their release was, and so yeah, it was just like a perfect match up. And they aren't together anymore, but we're 11 years in and still going strong.
It's impressive.
Yeah. So you went to Europe and traveled with your now wife for a year, or how long?
Yeah, we did. Basically had like a bunch of money in the bank, and we're like, let's just go for as long as this money lasts. Yeah, it was real fun. And we did 35 countries, and across 4 different continents. Did Africa, all through Asia, Europe.
Wow.
It was pretty cool. And then back to the real world.
Yeah.
How long were you in each place? What was your favorite? What'd you learn?
We had lots of favorites. Turkey was like real surprising for us. We went in with kind of no expectations, and just the people, the culture, the food, the history is incredible. I'm not sure where this kind of fits into my story, but I'll weave it in. We spent 3 months in South Africa, and I've actually kind of on and off for the last 10 or so years worked as a park ranger in South Africa, which is like a super random thing to do. But at uni, fixed a bunch of holes in the wall, made a bunch of money, decided I'm going to spend my summer break going to South Africa on my own and just exploring, and ended up working at this private game reserve just outside of Johannesburg. and became like really good friends with the owners. And they said, look, if you ever want a job here, there's one waiting for you.
Wow.
And so I flew home, renewed my visa, flew back. And yeah, I've been going there kind of on and off for the last like 10 years, doing kind of a couple of weeks whenever I can, playing Tarzan, working with lions, hyenas,
Wow.
cheetahs, leopards, that sort of thing.
So,
Yeah,
so,
it's
so
real
you
random.
doing that initially as like a side gig, and now you just do it for fun?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I get paid when I'm there, which is like a dream. Like I just pay for my flights and then free accommodation, food, and I make a few $100s a day working with animals. So it's pretty good.
That's the dream.
What do you do at that reserve?
It is incredible. So their like primary thing is research. And so basically the big challenge for any animal, typically in Africa, is just with more and more humans, the wild is getting a lot smaller. And so they're the only place in the world to ever successfully artificially inseminate big cats. And so that's allowed them to get a bunch of funding and do a bunch more research. And so on the farm, you're basically just like supporting with those research projects. A lot of that is like feeding these huge big cats, taking like groups around, vets around, farm maintenance, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's incredible. If you ever go into Africa, I recommend going to this place. I'll tell you after where it
What's
is.
it called?
It's called Ukatula.
Yeah, I spent 6 months in Johannesburg in 2013.
Nice.
So I was kind of traveling around a little bit, but I think I've been to that place.
It's in the like kind of northwest province, sort of by like Brits or Sun City. You ever made it out to
yeah,
like,
yeah. I made it out
Johannesburg?
to Sun City.
Yeah, it's quite close to there.
Wow. Okay, cool. So, all right, that's a really cool side gig. And then, but so you went back to New Zealand, and you're like, okay, now back to real life. I'm gonna get a job.
Yeah, well, when we were traveling around, this is where idea number two came along. So when you're traveling for a year, you can't take much stuff with you, right? You can't lug things around. So we were using a lot of Airbnb for short-term accommodation, and we also wanted to get access to things like a camera for the day or a drone or a paddleboard or a kayak or a bike. Going through just like a traditional rental company was a horrible experience for just wanting to use something for a couple of hours.
Hmm.
And so I thought, wouldn't it, all these Airbnbs we were staying in had so much stuff that was just like sitting there locked up and not being used. And I thought it would be amazing if there was an Airbnb for things. So you could basically go on an app and you could hire a bike for a day from a stranger. And so I got back to New Zealand. That idea was roaming around in my head. Decided to just get a job first before jumping into my next thing, and ended up landing this incredible gig with a company called Top Deck, which do basically like youth travel, 18 to 35-year-olds all across the world. And I ran their New Zealand sales function, which was like a pretty buzzy job. Looked after 400 stores, and I was basically a COVID casualty. So once COVID kicked off, there was no more travel around the world. I was tinkering away on this Airbnb for things. So I called it MUTU. Yeah, I basically got made furlough. I'm sure you know what that is, but I was basically paid a full salary with no expectation to work for 3 months. And so I was like, that's the trigger to go all in on this startup. It's like full salary, and I'm just like 12 hours a day bashing away on this idea.
Cool.
And so, yeah, that was kind of the force I needed to go into that one.
So how did that go? I mean, obviously, like probably COVID wasn't the best time to launch something like that.
No, it was such an incredible journey. I learned so much. I kind of look back at that and laugh, like I can't believe I approached it in that way or did these things. But I think incredible experience. I took a very, very unique approach, and because we had very little money to start this thing, investors weren't super excited by like consumer apps, especially in New Zealand. It's hard to get critical mass, that sort of thing. I went out and basically was like, I want to find some of the best possible people I can in New Zealand to help me. And so instead of having like one co-founder, I was like, what if I had 6 like micro co-founders? And so I went out and found like the general manager of Canon, the massive global camera company, and the chief marketing officer for Hyundai, a car company.
Wow.
And these like all these incredible people. And I was like, hey, I've got this idea for this crazy app, and I want you to be a part of it. And I'll give you like a couple of % of my company, and I have no money. You have to work for free. And they all said yes. It was incredible. They were like, yeah, you do sound crazy, but we're keen. So ended up kind of bringing on this small team of, I guess, co-founders. We were able to raise capital. And yeah, we scaled the platform to maybe, I don't know, 30 odd thousand households. But the big learning I took from that is it's not solving a major problem. And so if you think about this, like both of you own things, right? And I don't think you've ever gone to bed and thought, man, if my bike doesn't get used tomorrow, like I'm going to be so annoyed. Like you just aren't like really worried about it when you own something. And so to get like a marketplace, like a flywheel effect, you need both sides of the marketplace incentivized and motivated. And I just had one. I then realized very quickly I'm going to have to pivot this business away from consumer. It turns out that businesses have the same problem consumers do. So think of construction companies, universities, city councils. They have millions of dollars of assets that sit idle. And so I basically then just pivoted the business to B2B and thought, let's just build these big, boring, slow companies, a piece of technology to digitize their assets and make them easy to move around. And so that company's still running today. I found no excitement and joy in helping large companies move their assets around. And so I was able to exit the business and which was great. And then go all in on idea number 3. So just
wow.
to the
So
next
that company's still around, you're saying?
Still running. Yeah. So I was able to put a new founder or kind of new CEO. And yeah, it seemed like it's going strength to strength. It's going really well.
How did you, maybe just quickly dive into that. How did you, A, decide that it was time for you to leave? And then B, how did you orchestrate all that? Because you had some experience trying to sell the first business. Yeah. How'd you do that?
So if I think about where I am with Appetise right now, I think about it all the time. And I think like I genuinely get a lot of joy from it. And I have that like a real fire in my belly and I'm like incredibly motivated. And that was there with MUTU. It was like really strong. And it just got to a point where that like fire had disappeared and I was trying to put my finger on what it was, but I just didn't find any connection to like the problem, or I had no love for the solution. It was just a great business. It kind of like fixing holes in the walls. Like I just didn't care enough to do that forever. And so I think that was a moment for me. Like I needed someone who cared enough about helping construction companies shift waste or shift machinery, and was able to find someone. So we didn't have venture funding. We had like a whole bunch of really, like high net worths across New Zealand who put in about $1 million. Yeah. I essentially said to them, look, I'm happy to go out. They then built like a big syndicate of other investors to buy my shares and then distribute it across to, I think the new founder got some and the investors got the rest.
But how did you have that, like, I guess, sort of like, I guess, understanding, or because you need some introspection to sort of say, hey, this is not actually, I'm not as excited about this thing as I was when I started it, right? Like, do you have a regular kind of like, I don't know, do you have a weekly routine? Maybe every single week you kind of like check in with yourself, or did something prompt that? Or how do you just, you personally, how did that come about? Because I think it requires a lot of...
Yeah, I think, you guys are both like from the entrepreneurial space and understand startups and being a founder. Like, I think it's got to be one of the most challenging things to do on planet Earth. It is so hard all the time, especially pre-product market fit. It just feels like everything is against you and nothing's going to go right. And I think what keeps me personally in it is when you can look past all that and go like, hey, if I achieve half the things I'm talking about achieving, what an incredible outcome for the world or for myself or for the people around me, our team. And I think when that disappeared, it's like I'm doing all this hard, horrible stuff and I'm putting, 70, 80, 100-hour weeks and just throwing my life at this. And I just don't really care about the outcome. And it was just this weird like wake up moment where I was like, I don't care about that world. I don't even necessarily see this business being like, it's just like a weird wake up moment where I was like, it's just not me. Whereas, I think every founder, that would be my guidance, is like, if you don't have that like ruthless hunger and passion and excitement and vision for what you're building and like the world you're trying to create, but once that goes, super hard to get back. Once that spark disappears, I think like getting up and doing big days time and time again, that's going to be hard.
Yep. Nice. Yeah, that's helpful. You had a kind of financial exit as well. You made some money.
Yeah. Not enough to like retire my parents or anything too crazy, but able to buy like our first home and a car. So it was like,
that's awesome.
A nice.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it was cool. So it was still like I hope the Appetise one has about 10 more zeros, but it was still pretty good.
Yeah. So let's talk about Appetise, I guess back in the day, MenuAid. So what was like, how did you come up with the idea and, how did you think about it when you first started?
Yeah. So it was just born out of like pure frustration. So Elise was working, I guess, like as a project manager, and I was doing these like insane hours on MUTU. And one of the like biggest friction points in our relationship was figuring out what we're going to eat. It was Toby, you're responsible for 2 of these dinners. She was responsible for the rest. And my default being busy and was just cook the same stuff. It's easy to make these 2 dishes and I can eat them every week. I have no trouble with that. And so once that wasn't an option, that wasn't sitting very well, I then had to like go through cookbooks and look at recipe sites. And I was like, this has to be a better way. And so I saw the rise in those meal kit services, HelloFresh, My Food Bag. So we, just out of curiosity, we thought, let's try those. And I loved it. I don't know if either of you used one of those meal kits before.
Yeah,
I've never tried HelloFresh now. Do you, Mark?
Oh yeah, I tried one of them in the US, Blue Apron or something.
It's amazing. A box of food shows up each week. You don't think about anything and you just cook it. That's great. But they are riddled with problems. They're like quite expensive. You still have to do your grocery shopping for everything outside of dinner and lots of waste. So again, I just thought they're onto something, but they're not thinking big enough or broad enough. And so that's the idea for MenuAid, was what if we could make a platform that intimately understands your household. So dietaries, things you do and don't like, how you like to cook, what's important to you, could then serve really personalized inspiration for what to cook. It then turns that inspiration into a shopping list, capturing everything you need. And then you just leverage the supermarket's logistics system. So instead of trying to build a business that sends food in the mail, that seems really hard. Let's just get them to do that part. That was the initial idea. I'd just come off a bit of a startup streak. So I was feeling like I could cut a few corners and get things to market pretty quick.
How did you get started? Because I guess a lot of people have sort of these ideas when they have a problem, right? And they're like, oh yeah, I have this problem. I can figure out the solution. But then most people don't get started, right? That's the hardest part. So what were the first, 90 days? How did you go from I have this idea to I'm going to make this into a business?
Funny you say that. I get asked this heaps, and I'm always trying to think about the best answer or the right answer. But the truth, I think I'm incredibly stubborn in that I thought it was so ridiculous that this didn't exist and that the current solution was going on recipe websites or buying a box of food each week. And so for me, I basically just thought, what would the easiest way be to solve this problem? I effectively just said to Elise, can you take care of all the recipes and I'll take care of the rest? So I took a similar approach to what I did with MUTU and went out and I was like, we need someone technical to build a prototype or an MVP. Found this amazing guy called Will who was happy to take a couple of percent to essentially build a platform for us. We then had a prototype. We realized that actually Elisa's recipes were not that nice or just, she's not a recipe writer. And so we found someone who was, that probably sounds pretty brutal. We won't cut that out though, because that would probably be kind of funny.
Toby might have some issues at home after this.
Yeah, I don't listen past 30 minutes. It all goes down.
Toby, you're on dinner duty for the rest of the year.
But we realized very quickly that creating recipes is actually a craft, much like graphic design, architecture. It's something that people specialize in. And so we found the best recipe writer in Australasia, and same idea, said, hey, we have no money. We've got this idea. It's kind of worth nothing at the moment, but it could be worth a lot. Do you want to go all in? And she did. So we had this small little team all kind of wrapped around this big idea. And
I think you're the first company. Well, I don't know. Maybe these food delivery companies similar, but it's the first company I've ever heard of that had a full-time recipe writer on staff. When I heard that first met, I was like, what? Why? You just get on Google.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. Is that actually a hard problem? Why can't you just get them on Google, or why can't you just take the best chef's recipe and just, because there's nothing proprietary about a recipe, right?
It's real murky taking these other recipes, and one of the challenges we have is having a centralized what's the word for it, where basically we need to transform any recipe and have it in a standardized format that we can then plug straight into the retailer. So we do take a lot of inspiration from the wonderful world of Google and recipe cookbooks and restaurants and things. And then we just have to transform them and kind of make them relevant to each market we play in now.
Toby, have you talked to ChatGPT about recipes and is it any good at making recipes from scratch?
Yeah, where AI is amazing. And I think a lot of people try things with AI and they have kind of an average experience and think it won't be good. But we actually brought on a prompt engineer. We tried getting it to write recipes and it was garbage. And we then brought on a prompt engineer to help us formulate like these. Basically, it took our library of 3,000 recipes into a vector store and it ingested all this information. It was like, cool, that's how you write recipes. This is the guidelines. Here are the do's and don'ts. And then we built these prompts. And now this thing spits out recipes like nothing you've ever seen before. We've even nailed the image generation. So I challenge you to go onto the platform and try and pick out the ones that are real or not. But it's incredible. It's getting really good. But that was by professionals helping us. We couldn't get there on our own. It's just too hard to get those prompts right, especially for image.
Yeah. And so you came up with this and then took it to market in New Zealand first, right? And what was the kind of learning from the first few months bringing this to the consumers?
Yeah, so it's so funny. Like before launch, we had this big launch day planned and we were like, far out. If we got 1,000 people in the first 6 months to like use our platform, we thought we were on track and launched. We got picked up by a whole bunch of different like media companies and had 4,000 people sign up in the first like 2 days. So we're like, all right, tools down. We've figured it out. We've built the next Uber. We thought we'd really smashed it. And then you enter the new world of like, people love trialing things that sound interesting and there's a lot of curiosity, but building something that's truly sticky and like people build habits around and want to come back to every week. That's the challenge for any consumer company. So yeah, we learned very quickly that just having lots of users meant nothing. We then had to like build something people couldn't live without. And so we were able to raise capital, which was fantastic. And yeah, we were charging the consumer back then $4 a week. That was the business model. I can't remember, Mark, did you join just on consumer or did we have B2B vision? Do you remember because I think it was like, I can't tell when.
It was we met in early 2023.
Yeah,
and
so
you had mostly consumer, and you were just at that point starting to think about B2B, and you were like, hey, we got some interest, and maybe we had 1 or 2 contracts.
Wow, yes, you jumped in, you took a big leap, far out.
So talk a little bit about the B2B side. So you have this consumer business, you make $4 per week per consumer. And then what did you figure out on the B2B side that's probably even more interesting?
Yeah, so a good friend of mine runs a beverage company and they do, $2 or $3 million in revenue. So they're sort of small, emerging. He said to me one day when we were catching up, he's like, I have no idea why people buy our products. And I don't know who they are. I don't know if they're buying like 1 or 2 to have, with dinner, if they're taking them to the beach, if they're drinking 10 of them and hitting sledgehammers through walls. He had no idea. And he said it makes it so difficult to market. If you're trying to go and advertise and promote and find partnerships and grow your company, if you have no idea why people buy your products or who they are, incredibly challenging. And that's just where the light bulb was just like, oh man. And I thought, he's a small company. Surely the big ones know this. And so I just started reaching out to people at, Fonterra and Kraft Heinz, these huge companies, just saying, hey, out of curiosity, like I'm a founder of this tech business. Do you know the answer to these questions? And they all came back saying no. And I thought, oh man, like this could be a serious opportunity. And so just like anything, we just wanted to put some like feasibility around it. How big was the TAM? Who else was anyone else playing in the space? And so
I like how you started thinking that way later, but like initially it was just like solving your own pain point. And then later you're like, let me just,
Yeah, it was like the sort of right place, right time. We got, a lot of luck, but also, kind of being just in a good position. And we went to 10 different companies and said, would you pay, say, call it $20,000 for us to give you a Canva report with some interesting stuff? And pretty much all of them did. So we thought, oh, it's pretty cool. And so that was incredibly unscalable, making these like Canva presentations with bespoke insights packs. But when you're getting $20,000,
yeah, you showed me some of that. I remember that when we were like first investing, you showed me some of these, and you were like, "Yeah, these companies are paying
look at them now."
And I was like thinking, like, yeah, you could automate a lot of this. This sounds like an interesting business.
Yeah. We did a lot of manual things that didn't scale, but we learned a lot very quickly. It meant we didn't have to build anything, and so we made the decision pretty quickly thereafter that we're going to go all in on being an insights company, and we're going to stop charging consumers. Turned off at the time like 220K worth of recurring revenue overnight, which is when you're when you were doing like 800K was a big slap in the face, but that's okay. We're all part of a better cause.
And the rationale was to say, okay, we need to get to much more scale. And the way to do that is to make it free so that we can charge the B2B side.
Yeah. Yeah. We just wanted to go full mass market, completely free. A lot of our sort of consumer based competitors, they all charge. And so we thought, look, let's just go build the best possible platform with the lowest barrier to entry. And yeah, it's been the best thing ever. We have such strong like acquisition, super cheap people. Yeah. So it has been a great move. It did hurt a little bit at the start, but yeah, we were able to then very quickly transition to being an insights company. I think we grew from, when we were first chatting, Mark, I think, we had like 2 or 3 brands. That might have been like January, Feb. By kind of May, June, we had like 20 brands and, brought on 700 or so K in like a few months. It was just like far out. This is amazing. And yeah, so kind of fast forward to today, we've got, I think there's about 110 or so brands.
Wow.
Recently moved so Elise and I moved to Australia. We've set up a team in Australia. Probably 25% or so of our revenue now is coming from Oz. We're getting like some awesome traction here. And yeah, that's just all.
And on the consumer side, what's the scale at the moment?
We're at about 80,000 or so households. It's interesting. Now that we're, I guess, an insights company, there's less of a need for like true mass market. You just need to build, I guess, like representation in the markets you serve. And so our focus is like building really healthy panels in each market and then just making sure we top them up and there's enough insights coming through.
Interesting. So you started off basically solving your own problem of like, hey, what do we eat? And curate a bunch of recipes with the hard things being kind of like you go shop yourself. And then you sort of like, out of that came this insight that like brands don't know who's actually buying their products, like the demographics, the ages, what they're buying it with. That's what I found really interesting is that like you have some of the biggest brands in the world using your product. And then the way like you kind of explained it to me was like, supermarkets are black boxes. And what I was also surprised about was that like the supermarkets themselves also don't really know that data. So whenever a brand comes to a supermarket, they can actually give them insights about who is buying, right? That the supermarkets don't know. So that gives like the brand actually leverage with the supermarket to kind of like tell them we should be placing our products here, not here.
You got it exactly right. Those retailers, they are money printing machines. I'll give them that. They are seriously good at making money, but they're just bricks and mortar businesses. They're good at selling groceries and that's about it. Like from technology perspective, they just partner with other technology companies or acquire data that way. So yeah, this whole space is so ripe for disruption. And we're here to do it.
And what's the big vision?
When you first met Toby, like did you, because that was like 2 or 3 years ago, were you primarily interested in the consumer side, or were you like, man, this B2B side, this insight side is going to be what's really big?
To be honest, I was just kind of interested in Toby, right? I think in the earliest stage, it's all about the founder. And when Toby kind of told me about the business that he had before and he exited that and had this own problem that he then figured out how to solve, and then had these it's like the whole journey, right? It's not any one of these things by themselves that was interesting. It's more just like he's had this like kind of trajectory of being an entrepreneur, of like solving problems and just like figuring out like kind of like his objective function was like solving problems in like the biggest kind of space that he could find. And I think it was just that. And obviously there's some interesting kind of like growth that he started seeing with the B2B side of the businesses. And and like I would tell people about like this business, I was like, it's kind of like Google Analytics, but for like retail stores. And everyone's like, oh, that's interesting. I never thought about it that way. So yeah, I think that's kind of what it's always like with the best founders. It's like it's a very N of one kind of thing. Where just like figure out this like weird problem that no one ever really like thought about before, but it's actually like a big problem. And then you like figure out some like interesting, unique way of like getting a wedge into the market that like you can't really replicate if like he just told you like exactly what he did. Because you have to like come into it like in that exact same way. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's what it was. But I am kind of curious, Toby, how do you think about like what the bigger vision is for the business?
In terms of the bigger vision, you'll both be familiar with Shopify, incredible business. There's another Toby who's the founder CEO there, and he talks a lot about this like theory. It's probably not his, but he talks about it a lot. Just this idea of future casting, where you sort of like look forward as far as you can and go, and they do it crazy, like 100 years in the future. And so as a business, we thought about like 10 years time, like what world do we think Appetise could create if, a third of the things we talk about even came true. And we basically like built this world, and we wrote a press release, and like, this is what the press release would say about Appetise achieving its mission.
Mm.
And we got Mid-Journey to make an image of this moment. And
Wow.
we're like, okay, well, there's like 10 things that had to be true for that to work. And then we just worked all the way backwards to 2024 at the time. And we're like, right, quarter by quarter, this is what has to happen. And then we just keep thinking about that vision. Has it changed now that we know things? It does a little bit, but it just helps contextualize like this like big kind of scary unknown of where you're trying to go. You start to like distill it down into a quarterly
So
block.
what is that?
It becomes a bit
So like, well, I mean, we got to ask, what's the vision? What does it look like?
So at the moment, insights are incredibly expensive. And so for most of these beverage companies, it's just your big, large enterprise ones that have access to information. So 90% of all new products fail. So they're no longer on the shelves in 18 months. So what you have is thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of these food brands guessing and just making terrible products that no one wants. And so as a consumer, we're not getting the things we need or that we desire. As a brand, we're spending money on things that aren't important that no one wants. And then the supermarket's just making money regardless. So we're not worried about them. And I guess at Appetise, we think about like, what does a world look like if every brand had access to the information they need to make the best products on the world? What does that mean for a consumer? What does that mean for the brands that exist? And so this like whole mission is around democratizing that access and making this information like readily available to everyone. So that's what we think would happen. And we think that if we could achieve that, there's some very large research companies that would be very worried about Appetise and would like to own Appetise or get us out of the way. And we think there'd be some very happy consumers, and we think there'd be some very happy brands. So I think that's kind of what we're aiming for.
How does that, like, maybe you've already seen this, companies have been using your platform for years now, right? From what I understand. Have you seen them changing their resource allocation or strategy or marketing budgets or sales? Have you seen them actually changing their behavior around the insights you provide them?
Yeah,
and like
and
what does it look like?
It's been super tough, Mark. Look, to kind of like paint the picture of the convo we're trying to have with them is that the supermarket have invented what's called categories, where they take the big box that they put all the groceries in and they divide it up into aisles, and each of those aisles has a name. So like table sauces or, pasta or protein. The challenge is like none of us, so the three of us, we've never thought about the world through categories. We think about it through occasions. Like, hey, I need to make dinner tonight for my family, or I need to make something my kids will eat, or I've got friends coming over, or I want to make something fun. So we think about it through an occasion-based lens. And often when you're making a meal or you need to buy things, it spans across maybe 10 categories, right? You got to buy things from all over the place. And so these brands, they just think like this. They just go, okay, I'm a spice brand. What are all the other spice brands doing? They don't think about that actually, what is protein doing and what is happening in veggies and what's happening in snacking. And so we're trying to convince them to think like a consumer thinks through the occasion-based lens and try and show up in that way, which, look, some of them have got there and it's been incredible where they've gone, actually, there's a whole new way we can think about our business and innovation and showing up. And they're starting to make these new products and starting to enter these different like occasions. And some of them are just going insane. Whereas others, it's a lot of like dragging, it's like, come on, come to this side, it's better, which is really hard, right? Because if you've done the same thing for 30 years, it's hard when a new shiny startup tries to convince you to do something different, but we get there bit by bit.
What are those brands that are thinking in terms of occasions instead of categories? You don't need to use specific names or anything, but just give us an example of what that looks like. Is it that they're like, well, maybe we need to have partnerships because we know that people buy this spice with this meat. Maybe we need to advertise the fact that we work really well with this meat more, or that we need to have a partnership with this meat or whatever. Like, obviously, I don't know what that exact kind of example is, but is that kind of what it looks like? What does it actually kind of tangibly look like?
Yeah. So I'll give you some examples. I won't be able to share the names. Take a like frozen beef patty manufacturer, right? So you're in the frozen category. You just make beef patties that you cook directly from frozen. And so there's maybe 6 brands that do that. And all those brands are doing is coming up with a new flavor, right? Let's do a smoky flavor. Let's do a cheesy flavor. Let's do a vegetarian option. And the challenge with that is you're only competing for the burger occasion. When someone feels like burgers and then they feel like beef burgers, then you're in the options to be picked, right? And if there's 6 brands, your pool, it's like a funnel. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And so just making a new flavor is going to do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So this brand in particular is like, okay, well, how do we go further than this? And so they're now thinking about how could we show up in pizza? How can we show up in breakfast? How can we show up in snacking? Air fryers are growing in popularity. How can we show up in, so they're going, let's not think about these burger companies anymore. Let's think about all the other things that people eat that are really interesting and popular, and let's make products in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they're getting like across the supermarket. They're not just in this one little zone anymore. They're now showing up in all the different aisles. And so as a brand, you're getting in front of way more people. You're more meaningful. You're more important. You're not going to eat burgers every day.
How does that work
won't.
practically? Is it that they make a product that goes on pizza, or they make a product that can be not frozen as a snack?
It's a bit of both. So some of them, they have limitations with what they can manufacture. So some are like, actually, we can only make things that are frozen. Others have a bit more flexibility. Typically, though, they'll just go through a period of feasibility. So we give them an insight. They'll then go through like a step-by-step process to validate the insight and whether they can actually make the product and scale the product, and if there's a good margin on the product and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite a long journey from us telling them something to do to them actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Geez, it's exciting when it goes through that whole step and we're like, tick, 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 tick. So yeah, it's great, I think.
Do they see like an uptick in sales when you tell them that?
So I think the biggest wins that we're getting, like from immediate uplifts in sales, is helping with like positioning and the stuff you were mentioning before, partnerships, collaborations, activations, helping them really think about how would someone truly use this and what is the best way to like go to market strategy, get it in front of as many people. And so we've had awesome examples where, brands have like doubled their sales in a month, or they've had major uplifts just from like leveraging smart information, which is super inspiring. And it's the kind of case studies we need to help and bring on more brands.
Yeah. So
what's next in the next 3 to 5 years? So you got the 10-year vision. How do you get there over the next 3 to 5 years?
So we've distilled it down into, I guess, these like core buckets. We want to be a global business. So we want to build panels in multiple markets around the world. So we're looking a lot at the US right now. And so, yeah, we've had amazing traction in Australia. We've got a very repeatable model. So just thinking about that. There's this whole idea around like product excellence and thinking, how do we get to product market fit? And it's kind of a term that it gets chucked around a lot. And we've basically built this model where we can track like how much product market fit we have across our products. And we've built like a scoring system. And so we're at level 1. We want to get to level 4. So we've got a wee while away, but we're making good inroads there. So aiming to get to kind of level 3 the next 3 to 5 years. And then, just basically like our major focus is growth right now. It's just like helping build up awareness of what we do. And because it is new, we need brands we don't have that market pull. Brands aren't going, I need that thing yet. They're going, I have a problem. I don't know who solves it. I don't know if anyone can solve this. And so we're kind of educating, trying to get out there. So that's our big focus, is like trying to generate a bit more market pull as well.
Toby, what does the food brand of the future look like?
The food brand of the future is going to shift away from making very uneducated bets that cost millions of dollars. I think they're going to be incredibly consumer centric, and they're going to want to know who their consumers are inside and out. And they're going to want to make sure they're delivering products that truly solve an unmet need. And so I think we're going to see brands who are building these like deeply loyal communities, and they really focus in on like a particular segment with a particular problem, much like startups do, right? Like we really think about what is that market we serve? Who is that core ICP? We have all these buzzwords and we have a way of thinking, but I think it can translate into these companies where they go, actually, we just serve this type of shopper, and we do it so incredibly well, and we build this like cult-like following. Like I think those are the brands that are going to be incredible versus the ones that we see today who have, 400 products that touch kind of everyone, not that meaningfully. I think those will disappear.
What's an example of a brand that's doing that really well?
There's one right now. I don't know if you invest in the like food and bev space, but there's one right now who I think has done it like best in class. They're called MUTU. I'm not sure if you've seen them. Hard to miss them on LinkedIn at the moment, but it's a husband and wife duo, or a boyfriend-girlfriend duo. And they've built like a prebiotic soda company. And they have this super targeted customer that they're going after, this impeccable branding, and this cult-like following. They basically get hundreds, if not thousands of people to flood the stores that they're getting released in, and they clean out the shelves. It's amazing. And it's good. Everyone's paying attention. Everyone wants to be like them. Yeah, giving away a Range Rover, that'll help.
Interesting. Giving away a Range Rover. That's the first thing I see on the site.
Yeah.
So
quite.
What is this? This is a company that does prebiotics, probiotics. Okay, for like who? Who's their customer? Why do you like this?
I couldn't tell you. Just think it's if you look at like all the tick boxes for growth, like they've built an incredible brand. So if you like look at the brand, it's very clean, it's exciting, it's modern. They've created products. I mean, I don't consume these products. I'll disclaim. I'm no way involved, but they're targeting an area that's incredibly popular and that there's a big market pull for. I don't know if you saw recently Poppy, the company that was acquired for like $1 billion in the probiotic soda space. There's this huge pull, and the two founders have built this incredible like cult-like following. I think it's amazing. I think they've done a great job. They're clearly like listening to their customers. They're building things that they want. They're communicating with them regularly. It's very consumer centric, which is it's been great. Great to see.
Interesting. What was the other one? Poppy, you said?
Yeah, that one's just made. I think it's PepsiCo has just maybe try an I on the end. PepsiCo has just acquired them for like $1 billion or something insane. Maybe $2 billion.
Oh, right. This is kind of a different kind of soda. Yeah, I've seen that. Right.
But same kind of space that Moody's trying to play in.
Right. Interesting. Now, these companies, do they have? I think they seem like they're. I guess Poppy, I think, is selling through retail. So would a company like this, does a company like this have the kind of data that you provide, or did they figure that out on they build stuff like that on their own, or how does that work? How does a company like get to $1 billion in acquisition by Pepsi?
Yeah, it's a good question. They will definitely have a lot of data at their fingertips. What I've found with some of these companies that do have like a really strong sense of community is that anytime they're looking to create new products, they will have an e-com element, which is such a low risk. You can do really small batches and you can basically just go, hey, look, we're going to make 1,000 cans of this stuff. We're going to give it to our sort of super fans or our champions and just get really quick live feedback over like, do people love the flavor? Would they pay for it? So they've kind of taken quite a smart approach of having some form of direct to consumer channel, being able to essentially take requests from their loyal customers about what flavors they want next. Whereas all the other brands, right, they're just guessing. Like they just assume or look at what their competitors are doing, which not a great way to do it.
Interesting.
So how do you, the growth path you've taken from New Zealand to Australia and then to the US is pretty common, right, for this part of the world. How do you enter the US as an Australian, New Zealand company? How do you think about that?
Yeah, we're early on that journey, but we've had some good guidance from some other founders. Love any guidance either of you have. But we're thinking about it in tackling it kind of almost each state as a country to some degree versus trying to tackle the whole audience at once. So picking a state, and the way we did it in Australia, which was super effective, is we built up our panel of people first. So we got to maybe 15,000 households using the platform and loving it, getting some good data. And then we found similar companies that, say, if we worked with a chicken company in New Zealand, we were then going to similar looking companies in Australia saying, hey, we work with lots of manufacturers in your category back in New Zealand. Or we would take New Zealand companies that had an Australian presence and we'd get introduced to that business. And so very quickly we had 7 or 8 brands that we could work with quite quickly, which means you're now like, you're not super new. You've sort of got a few customers, you're kind of real. And so it's how do you quickly build up, I guess, like credibility and market. And so that's how we think about it for the US, is pick a state, try and get a bunch of users on, try and get, 5, 10 brands pretty quickly who are loving it and can advocate for us.
Yeah, makes sense. Great. Do you have any advice for founders from who are just starting off now from New Zealand? Like how do you get started building a global business out of New Zealand?
Yeah, I like 3 cracks in. The one thing I just wish I did way sooner is just be like deeply obsessed with like finding product market fit as fast as possible. We're 3 years in now and only just starting to like truly take it seriously. I think in the back of your mind, you always think that you have a bit of it because people like what you're doing and they tell you the idea is cool and they might sign up and give you some money, but everything is so hard until you have product market fit. And I'm sure it's still hard afterwards, but it's probably just different challenges.
How do you know when you have it?
The way we're thinking about it is that like you're starting to get all your metrics start to convert better. So like your win rate of selling will go up, your churn rate will go down, your like retention increases. You start to notice that like your go-to-market metrics are changing, where your inbound signals, getting more of your leads are coming inbound. And so we've got this huge suite of metrics that we've built out, which we feel is like different trigger points when like product market fit is improving. Because otherwise it's impossible to measure, right? Because I think everyone thinks they solve like a problem and that people care and pay them money. But there's all these little micro signals that tell you that, hey, there is like strong market pull here, and that all of your metrics are like converting at kind of best in class ways, and that you're getting healthy margin. And so we've kind of built this like full framework around it.
Do you feel like you have it right now?
No, we've got what we call extreme problem market fit. So if like consumers they're craving what we're looking for, we have thousands sign up every week, but there's like certain things still in that product that we need to improve to just grow really strong, like adoption, stickiness. And same with our brands. Like the brands, just every conversation, their eyes light up. They're so excited. They're like, this is amazing. But still, we're only converting 15% of our conversations right now. We're trying to get that to like closer to 30 to 40. Like that's where we think you're kind of order taking, right? People are showing up going, I need this thing. Full HubSpot mode. That's product market fit. It's no convincing. People are there with their money in their hand saying, give me your thing. I need it.
And what do you think is still missing? Like, what are you still missing to get there?
I have a few assumptions. It's people don't know that this is a thing yet. That's the challenge. We're the first one to ever do this. There's to the best of our knowledge, there's no one on the planet that has built a consumer app and is then using that as a way to like deliver incredibly unique insights to food brands. And so no one's looking for it because they don't think it exists. And so much of our work is educating the market on there is a better way. The challenge with that is if I'm selling into NZVC, I'm like, I've got this great idea. The person on the other end then has to convince the rest of the company that like, hey, let's bin the thing we've done for 30 years and let's trust this kind of fun, interesting guy from New Zealand that he thinks he's got a better way of solving this problem. And so that's just really hard. You need just to get a lot of companies doing it and talking about doing it for you have like an adoption curve, right? We've got the early adopters and get those laggards and late majority to line up.
Yeah. Interesting. And do you think it makes sense for you to stay in the region, like in Australasia, for the foreseeable sort of like, 2, 3, 4 years? Or do you see it kind of as important to like branch out and go to the US or go to Europe?
I think as a founder, if you can do it, I would strongly encourage you to be in the next most important market. And so we could have hired a head of Australia and, got them to build a team and to kind of get them to emulate culture and to kind of drive our business. But no one's going to do that like Elise and I can. And we thought, look, let's be the ones to do that. And we're thinking the same for the US. Like we want to build a team in New Zealand, in Oz, that has, the same culture as New Zealand. They're getting incredibly well-oiled machine, and then we'll just get out of their way and go and do it again. You got any good recommendations of where to park up in the US? Or I'll need some recommendations. Won't be for a little while.
Absolutely.
Yet.
So is there any other advice? You said like extreme focus on the problem.
Yeah, I think just to round out that point, right? If I go back to MUTU as an example. So I said to you both, right? No one was like lying in their bed, just like wondering if or really upset that no one used their bike or their surfboard. And so you could tell anyone about that idea, like, hey, this guy built this Airbnb for things. Most people would say, far out, that's like such a cool idea, like really interesting. But it was just a terrible business. It was just a really bad business. And that happens. And I think so many founders have brilliant ideas, and I think 90% of it is like execution, and you just need to make sure you're solving like a burning problem for people that have money to pay for that problem. And that can be really hard because sometimes the good idea doesn't have a big enough market or people with money to pay for things. I would start there.
If you were building a consumer brand today, given all, like, all the data about everything, what's that consumer brand that you would build, like in the selling into supermarkets, kind of like, I guess, food space? Or what are some interesting options for that?
So I think on our platform, like the most popular rising thing right now is fusion. So people mishmashing cuisines together. So like Mexican and Indian combine, or like Korean and Japanese fusion. And I think there's such a fun opportunity for a brand to like really lean into that and to think about like the best of both worlds. Take like a burrito and like, I don't know, and sushi. Like, what does that look like together? And finding ways and having like fantastic packaging that like, I think that people are sick of cooking the same thing over and over again and eating like boring food. We all want to eat things that are yum and enjoyable and exciting. And I think there's quite a cool way to like because think of every country. It's like a beautiful mix now of so many different cultures and people. How do you kind of emulate that in the food world? Shouldn't have to be, I'm just having Japanese or I'm just having Chinese or Italian. What do they look like meshed together? But I don't know. It's going to be a pretty bold brand to go after that one. I think it's quite left field.
That's cool. I like that sushi burrito.
Well, that's actually a thing. I've seen that I think in Canada they do it, which, yeah, it's a weird thing. Awesome. Toby, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. It was awesome. Much appreciated.
Thank you for tuning in to TechMates. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with friends. We'll be back soon with more stories of Kiwi and Aussie founders reshaping the future and disrupting down under. Until next time, keep dreaming big and daring to disrupt.